Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn at pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hello there, and good morning to you. Welcome to the last Monday in August of 2017. Again, as is the case in these times, there is so much news to discuss that one gets paralyzed knowing where to begin. As we speak, Houston underwater, rescue operations going on, death toll truly unknown and bound to rise. When the National Weather Service sends out I got it as a tweet. When it sends out a tweet that says, let me get the exact wording, you're in uncharted territory. And of course I can't find, here it is. I happened to just read this on Twitter early yesterday, and I thought, oh my God. Here is what the National Weather Service put out. This event is unprecedented, and all impacts are unknown and beyond anything experienced. Essentially, that's the National Weather Service saying, we have not a clue. We've never seen anything like this. Because we have no models, it's hard for us to predict what could happen. Unprecedented, a word that, as you know, is the word of the year for us, since as soon as Mr. You-Know-Who came on the scene, we were using it every other minute. It's unprecedented. That's unprecedented. Did you hear? Unprecedented. And now even the weather. Unprecedented. Impacts unknown beyond anything experienced. That is chilling. And they're calling it a 1,000-year flood now. Wait till one happens next year. I'm sorry. I just let's drop back to an easier time just to get us away from all the horror for a moment. I'm going back to this date. Yeah, August 28th. But 1964. Okay? Some of you weren't alive. I was. And I was a big fan of both Bob Dylan and the Beatles. And on this day, Bob Dylan met the Beatles for the first time. They had just played a concert at Forest Hills in Queens. And the Beatles had gone back to their hotel in Manhattan. The hotel now is a Trump hotel. It was not then, of course. Anyway, some music reporter had organized the visit so that Dylan could stop by and meet the Beatles. And Dylan shows up, and he shows up with his road manager who was carrying his stash. And Dylan said to the Beatles, hey guys, you want to get high? And he finds out at that moment that these four fresh-faced mop heads from Liverpool had never smoked pot. The Beatles. Marijuana Virgins, 1964, hotel room, New York City, and Bob Dylan offers them their first joint. Apparently, they said they tried it in Germany, but they didn't do anything to them or whatever. Anyway, Ringo Starr remembers the event. He says, "We got high and we laughed our asses off." And so there you have it. Just because. On this date in history, the Beatles got high on pot given to them by Bob Dylan. August 28th, 1964. I want to thank Dave for sending me that little historical tidbit. I'm most appreciative. My favorite sign so far that I've seen from all the coverage of the hurricane is, I think, 5 or 6 guys. They're dressed alike. They got like their uniforms, and they're all carrying one of their big accoutrements to their uniforms, big guns. I mean, big things they're carrying. And they're standing alongside of a sign which they have carefully painted. It's big, carefully painted on the side of a building. And it says this. I mean, it doesn't work as well audibly, but I wish I had the sign to show you. It says this: Lotters, Lotters, Lotters will be shoot on sight. SHOOT. Now, I think this brain trust of gun-toting buffoons had intended to write on the side of whatever building that was, is looters will be shot on sight. But all those O's got them so mixed up so that looters lost an O and became lotters, and shot became shoot. That none of them obviously noticed it is beyond belief, and that they stood proudly, guns brandished, next to the sign which they had so beautifully composed, is a riot. All of them had to have looked at it. None of them saw that, in fact, it said Lotters will be shoot on sight. So, let it not be said that Donald Trump does not take advantage of opportunity when it comes his way. An opportunity in this case is in the form of Hurricane Harvey. Because as the nation on Friday waited for what we were told was going to be a horrific event, and all of the media were poised to cover this potentially historic event and disaster, Donald Trump sees an opportunity. It's Friday night. Now, there's a thing in Washington called the Friday night news dump. And that is when savvy politicians, especially the White House, puts out news they just as soon nobody noticed. They've got to make it public, but making it public on a Friday night usually means it gets lost a little bit. It doesn't get the full treatment because people are off on their weekends. They're not watching the news as much. And also, this Friday night dump had Hurricane Harvey. So, undercover, essentially, of the devastating Hurricane Harvey, the Trump White House did 3 things, any one of which would have created a huge storm of its own without Harvey in the picture, okay? In a matter of, I think, an hour, Trump made his ban of transsexuals in the military an actual order as commander-in-chief to the military. But he had, of course, before done it in a tweet, which the military brass refused to acknowledge as an order. So he corrected that, and on Friday night he did what is a very unpopular thing and something the military itself does not want. He instituted the transgender ban on soldiers, even though our military is full of transgender people. By the way, an update on that, the ACLU announced this morning it will take Trump to court for this particular order. Because it's unconstitutional. And I would argue, yeah, it is, because I think there's something about, there's a pesky little clause in that dang Constitution of ours. It says something like equal protection under the law, that all of us, citizens of the U.S., get equal protection under the law, so that singling out one group, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I would think that the ACLU's got a pretty good case here. So, under cover of Harvey and the Friday night, he makes the transgender ban. The bigger thing, he pardons the sheriff. He pardons Arpaio. Now, for anyone not paying attention, if you bother to read up on Arpaio, a guy that Trump loves, and a guy that I guess Republicans love, because as far as I know, only a few were heard to bleat a slight astonishment that the president would do this. The reaction from most Republicans, absolute silence, as usual. He pardoned Arpaio. I read some reporting that had been done on Arpaio over the years. And this guy is evil. He's as un-American as they come. He should be doing life somewhere. Talk about equal protection. He openly targeted brown people. Openly targeted. He created a reign of terror on brown people. He set up what he called concentration camps. He called them his famous tent cities, where he'd take all the brown people his deputies had rounded up and he'd throw them in there. He'd sweat them out. Temperatures going up to 140 some degrees inside tents where they were not fed, they were not given the basic, cruel and unusual punishment for a crime of too much melatonin. He is evil. Trump pardoned him. His pardon caused Paul Krugman to write what I think is one of the better columns he's written in some time. It's not a particularly upbeat column, but of course it wouldn't be, since the subject matter is Donald Trump and Sheriff Arpaio. And Krugman in the column quickly runs down the horrors of Arpaio, the concentration camp, the brutality. He mentions that when Arpaio was told by the courts, stop it. You cannot do what you're doing. This violates the Constitution and the civil rights of these people. He ignored them. He just ignored them. Year after year after year, he just kept doing what he did. And eventually they sued him, the Justice Department, and eventually found guilty of contempt of court. This is what Trump pardoned him for. And actually, before he was found guilty, Trump called the Attorney General, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, and he told Sessions, "Can't you drop that case against my friend Arpaio?" Which, by the way, is called obstruction of justice when a president interferes with the Attorney General in such a manner. And this is not the first time, as we know, that this president has done that. It's called obstruction of justice. Okay. By the way, one of the things that Arpaio did besides rounding up every brown person his deputies could get a hold of was he actually sent deputies to Hawaii. And this had to do with another dark-skinned person. He sent his deputies from Arizona to Hawaii to look for Barack Obama's birth certificate. I mean, this guy, he had his eye on business. He was taking care of business. Okay, now I'm going to quote Krugman. Let's call things by their proper names here. Arpaio is, of course, a white supremacist. But he's more than that. There's a word for political regimes that round up members of minority groups and send them to concentration camps while rejecting the rule of law. There's a word for that? Really? When government targets groups, puts them in concentration camps, and pays no attention to what the law of the land is? Yeah. It's called fascism. Simple as that. It's called fascism. And that reminded me of something that I had seen, again, on Twitter the other day, which I found chilling, but chilling because of the truth of it. And it said essentially this: so America is finally waking up to what Germany once woke up to. And that is, it's a horrible fact, but it is, that 1/3 of your countrymen, 1/3 of us, would kill another 1/3 of us, while another 1/3 of us stood by, watched, went along, could do nothing. What the heck? We have talked often that looks like Trump's got about 1/3 of the country behind him. So that's 1/3 of the country quite willing to clearly create a fascist America. 1/3. And they are willing, in all likelihood, round them up, kill them, who knows. 1/3 willing to kill 1/3 while the other 1/3 is cowed into silence. That's what happened in Germany. Just saying. And Krugman says this: what makes it possible for someone like Trump to attain power and to hold it is not that he has a majority of people who want him. No. It's the acquiescence of people. People who aren't white supremacists. People who, generally like the Constitution and the laws and the rule of law. But nevertheless, people who for some reason are willing to go along with racists and with lawbreakers. If, well, on the one hand, it serves their interests. Tax reform. So the only real check there is Congress, which of course is no check at all, given that Congress is owned by the cowards and the collaborators of the Republican Party. So I'll just read you the last paragraph of Krugman's piece. Does anyone consider it unthinkable that Trump will fire Robert Mueller and try to shut down investigations into his personal and political links to Russia? Does anyone have confidence that Republicans in Congress will do anything more than express mild disagreement with his actions, if he does? As I said, there's a word for people who round up members of ethnic minorities and send them to concentration camps. Or people who praise such action. There's also a word for people who, out of cowardice or self-interest, go along with such abuses. And that is collaborators. How many collaborators will there be? I'm afraid we're finding out. So, the other thing he did under cover of darkness was he got rid of Seb Gorka, a true fascist in the White House, who now will, I guess, go back to his friend Bannon and Breitbart. So, folks, do you see, by the way, who's coming to our aid? You see Mexico? Do you see Mexico has sent some of its soldiers to Texas? Last time they did that, I think there was a thing called the Alamo. They have sent military to Texas to provide relief to the people of Texas. To feed them, to set up tents, all of that stuff. The Mexicans. And as they were doing that, our president was saying things about the Mexicans. As this is going on, he's still he's squawking in tweets about them paying for the wall. As this is going on. He's tweeting yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the day before, about his big win in Oklahoma or something, and how I'm going to be in Oklahoma, or Missouri it is. I'll be in Missouri. Later in the week, he's going to have another one of his rallies where he gets his energy up, sort of like a vampire needing blood every once in a while. He's got to go into the hinterland and have those people adore him. And people are drowning and losing everything. And he's tweeting about, I'm going to Missouri, and we're going to beat that Claire McCaskill, and we're going to this, and what numbers I had. And there are people running for their lives in Texas. And then he starts tweeting about the hurricane a little bit, but it's almost as though he's proud that the hurricane that happened on his watch is bigger, better, no one's seen the likes of it, And he actually had a tweet that said, "Wow!" exclamation point. The biggest something like that. This is the president. He's like, yeah, as with everything, Trump, this hurricane is the best. Yeah. Unbelievable. I mean, I was reading these tweets of his, and you can't even, it's hard to process. Oh, here's the tweet. Wow! Now experts are calling Harvey a once-in-500-year flood! Exclamation point. It's like, yay, team. He's out of his mind. Oh, and also while people are running for their lives and drowning and losing everything they have, he also tweeted, "Hey, you gotta buy this book." This is a guy who, by the way, never reads a book, but he's touting a book. You gotta read this book. And you know who the book is by? A really great author. It would be the extraordinarily racist sheriff of Milwaukee County, that lunatic, that idiot, black man who goes after blacks. He's a piece of work, that guy. He's written a book, apparently, and the president was trying to sell his book on Twitter while supposedly highly engaged in efforts in Texas. And is he still saying he's going to Texas on Tuesday, tomorrow?
Yes.
Well, that's out of it. That's just stark raving mad. Charlie Deitch is here, the editor. Do you believe that? What do you mean? The meteorologists say this event is ongoing. It ain't over. And the president's going to come to Texas like they need to deal with him?
Right. Well, but if he wants to put himself
No, I can't hear you.
If he wants to put himself in harm's way, I mean, who are we to?
Well, he's not.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's a ridiculous. I would say his priorities are mixed up, but I don't even think he has priorities at this point. It's a complete and utter, it's a shit show. It's a dumpster fire. It really is. I don't think anybody knows what's going on, including him. Like from minute to minute, day to day, he has no clue. And I know, now that the great Gorka is out of the White House, I mean, it's a sinking ship.
I know, but with Gorka and Bannon gone, the two fascists,
right?
Trump's gotten more fascistic since they've left.
Right, exactly.
Right. He didn't need them to be a fascist.
Yeah, it's like he put them out for whatever. Who knows why he forced them out? But it was almost like he was forced to force them out, and so now he's going to pick up their mantle of fascism and just general dickness.
Yeah. Dave says, remember, these people in Texas who now want our sympathy and money are the same people who threatened to secede from the Union when Obama was president. I know. Right. It's crossed my mind a few times, but, you can't. It's also crossed my mind that these are the people as well who voted against, their representatives in Texas voted against giving aid to the victims of Hurricane Sandy.
Right. Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Because those guys were what? That was Eastern elite types.
Yes.
That was.
Mm-hmm.
They voted. There was 179, believe it or not, Republicans who voted against giving relief.
Right. One of them right here in Western Pennsylvania, Keith Rothfuss. Just to remind that as he comes up for re-election next year.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was his. His first congressional vote, and he voted against relief for Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy.
Unbelievable. Well, yeah, but it did. It's occurred to me. I'm thinking, geez, those are all those. They're just getting what they deserve. That's the bad guy in me. But then the other, you look at people saving people, doing good work, and I'm thinking, yeah, those could be Trump voters too. So come on. It complicates things, doesn't it?
I think there are probably some very fine people caught in the storm.
I think there's some very fine people caught in this storm.
Necessarily.
You can't let politics get in this now. There are people in dire need, and I don't know. Dave says they're the same people who are part of militias who are preparing for a supposed invasion. Oh, right, by the U.S. government when Obama was president. Right. Remember that? Yeah. Well, just because they're stupid and racist doesn't mean you let them die.
Yeah, because they probably have kids who shouldn't be held responsible for their parents' idiocies. Also, by the way, speaking of that and Obama, I wish that shadow government that he formed would finally come out of hiding and take over this mess because, Yeah, he did that.
Oh, he did. Yeah. There was a shadow government.
Yeah.
Oh, God, what do we know? Barbara writes, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men and women do nothing. Yeah. That's all that tyranny needs. It's right. It's for all of us to just helplessly let it happen, right? We got to remember that. I don't think people are overstating it when Paul Krugman writes that this is a fascist, essentially that Donald Trump is a fascist. Well, that is not incorrect. His actions clearly show that he's a fascist. If he's anything. I mean, mostly what he is just a wild, crazed ego on the loose. I don't know. Unbelievable. I can't believe he can't go to Texas tomorrow.
No, he shouldn't. He just
well, if he is, he's going to exploit it. I mean, that's all he's doing. He can't. Yeah. And if he wants to act as if he's doing the right thing, he'll stay away.
Right.
Surely someone will tell him that.
He may just do one of those photo op flyover deals in a helicopter. W was famous.
Well, I don't think that worked too well for W. So I don't think so. God. So I did see one live moment. I didn't watch much of the coverage because I thought, been there, done that, seen it. It's almost like, I don't know. So I did tune in a little bit yesterday afternoon, I think. And there was a local reporter, a woman, who was standing somewhere on an overpass. And under her was a truck over the railing, and on a lower road was a truck that was up to here. And there was a driver in the cab. There was a guy in there. And she had drawn attention to it, and then a sheriff's car with a boat on the back comes driving by, and she runs. She's trying desperately. She's on air. She's trying to flag these guys. She's going like this, and then when they don't stop immediately, she actually runs after the cop car on air. And they stop. And she says to them, there's a guy. He's trapped in that cab. It's about almost, blah, 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 blah. She saved that guy's life. They come around. They end up, it drives you crazy how long it takes. They get in the boat. They get to the truck. They pull that guy out. And she saved his life.
Yeah.
And there was something she wasn't doing it. You could tell she wasn't doing it thinking, hey, this is cool. I'm on live. She was doing it as a concerned human being. She was wonderful. There was nothing showboaty about what she did, nothing at all. And when they brought the guy back, she was so happy. She said, he seemed sort of in shock. He wasn't even saying much, like, and she said, "Can I hug you?" And it was just so, she just needed to hug this guy. I was so moved by it. And I know there have been a lot of instances of that kind of thing. And that's, people have pointed out, Trump has famously said that media are the enemy of the people.
Right.
That was media. And all those reporters doing the jobs they're doing out there now are putting themselves in harm's way. And she was trying to explain that. She said, I know this is strange that we're telling you, do not come out, stay in your homes, shelter in place. And yet here we are. She says, but that's our job. We need to blah, 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 blah. And then she thanked her station for always caring about their safety and stuff. What a wonderful human being this young woman is. God, she was something. But yeah, it's the enemy of the people out there who are trying to get information to people to keep them safe. In some cases, actually involved in rescues. I've seen a few written instances of other reporters saving people. But they're the enemy. Unbelievable. Oh, by the way, one of the things that Trump did while no one was looking, he signed off on another order that pulls back something else that Barack Obama did as president. And that was under Obama, rules were promulgated that that made any infrastructure that would be built in the future have to, have to work into the plans rising sea levels. In other words, if you're building, if we're going to give federal funds to your highway project and you are in Houston, let's say, man, those highways have to be built to withstand what we know is going to be increased natural disasters through flooding. Trump nixed those regulations a few weeks ago. So, see, I'm doing it now too. What did I used to say before I said so? Because everyone says that now. Did I say What did I say? Did I say so?
I don't know.
Have you noticed it's a new thing? You have not.
So, yes. Oh, no, absolutely. So, anyway.
No, I'm not hearing
so, it. Or anyway, or so. Yeah, no.
No, everybody.
Everybody. No, there's no question.
I mean, educated people, erudite people,
Right.
Even eloquent people. You ask them a question, and the first word out of their mouth is, so, and then they start the answer. We didn't used to do that.
No, I don't think so.
Well, then what the hell? I hate stuff like that.
I don't know.
So, it's weird. I was going to say, so, remember when that young, good-looking dude was elected president of France, and then we found out that his wife is like, the difference between him and his wife in age is the same as between Melania and Donald Trump.
Right. Is that Carla Bruni? Is that who you're talking about?
No. His wife. I'm talking about Macron.
Oh.
Not Sarkozy. I'm talking about Macron, 39 years old, married his high school teacher. She's like 60-something. She's 60-something.
Yeah.
So there's more than 20 years, 25, 28, I don't know, I'm 30 years. And they're a lovely couple. Anyway, everybody loved him initially. I mean, he just won overwhelmingly and blah, blah, blah. Do you know his poll numbers in France are absolutely in the toilet? I mean, the French have decided they hate his guts now. But listen to this. Listen to this. Since he became president of France, he has spent $31,000 for a makeup artist to be at his beck and call. A full-time makeup artist, ladies and gentlemen, so that he can be bronzed and brushed and toned and scrubbed up for any occasion at a moment's notice. $31,000. A beautician is required to travel with Macron at all times. Now, what's ridiculous about this, he's a good-looking young man. I mean, he didn't need any of that crap. But it says here that his predecessor, François Hollande, who was no makeup artist could make him any better looking, but he paid $10,000 a month for a personal hairdresser. This would be scandalous here, wouldn't it?
Especially if Trump paid $10,000 a month for a hairstylist.
I don't even think he had much hair.
I
mean, like, I'm trying to think. Hollande. I mean, come on. And see, this isn't doing him any favors, Macron, with his beautician on call, because just last month he announced a series of austerity measures. He's putting cuts in housing benefits for students and low-income household and stuff like that. So he's doing what they always seem to do. He's taking money from the poor and using their money to balance his budget while he pays $31,000 for a makeup artist. Speaking of, looking at the people there in Texas, I'm about to lose my, I need to plug this baby in. It's going red. It's going down. Whoa! And that wasn't the only thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're still alive.
Are we? The entire board just went down.
Yes, we're there.
Okay. So, one of the dangers of politicizing something like this, like these are the people who didn't want to give relief to Sandy victims, and these are Trump voters, and screw them. You just got, again, living with complexity. There was an article in today's Post-Gazette, I think. I read so much, I just can't remember when I read what I read. But it was a really compelling article about a wonderful family in north of here somewhere. I can't remember. Some rural area. He's a pastor. They have foster children. They've adopted a number of children with disabilities. They have children by birth. So this is a family that truly lives what it preaches. And some of their children, I mean, they call them their children, but they're in their 20s and they're in wheelchairs and they require a lot of care and they're about to bring another kid over from Ukraine. So they take in people and give them homes. They voted for Trump. So I can't, and it's easy. You can say, "Oh, anybody voted for Trump, they're like bad people." Well, these people are living, doing wonderful things by giving a chance to people who otherwise would be just warehoused somewhere. Their own daughter is institutionalized near my home at the, what am I blanking on it, at the Rehabilitation Institute. So because they knew themselves what it was to have to deal with a truly disabled child, they did what not many people would do. They took in others that weren't theirs. They voted for Trump. So if the cognitive dissonance of that gives you trouble, well, good. It should. It's just too easy to do the broad brush stuff. As I said, yeah, some of the people you're seeing on your screens now, that are helping people in Texas, they voted for Trump. But they're doing the right thing now. People are complicated. And I don't know that I acknowledge that some of these really disabled people, youngsters that they have taken into their homes and adopted as their children, some of them are black. So you can't say, well, they're racist. They voted for Trump. They're racist. I don't think so. I don't know many racists who would take in a really disabled kid who's black and adopt them. Anyway, things are complicated. And none of us like being bothered with complexity. Makes things so complicated. Really. What did I just say? Something really stupid, didn't I? Yeah, I did. That things being complicated makes things complicated. I think that's what I said. And that's what I say when I'm also trying to read an email while talking. I'm sorry. That's what happens.
Well, it's technically true. Complicated things are complicated.
I know, but... Roger writes, the day of or after September 11th, as we're watching the Twin Towers fall again and again and again, Franklin Graham was compelled to let us know that those who perished who hadn't accepted Jesus as their Savior were not going to heaven. I bet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I bet he did, sure. Yeah, I don't know why he said it. But yeah, sure. They really think that. He thinks that. A lot of people think that. There's no doubt about that. Going straight to hell. Yeah. And Roger writes, how come stupid shit like that isn't being said about those dying in Texas? Well, I wondered, how, if a hurricane strikes the East Coast, you get a lot of these wackos saying that that's God, voicing his anger and displeasure at the Sodom and Gomorrah-like lifestyles of these Eastern elites. But when God rains down his fury on Texas, you don't hear it so much that this is a sign.
Well, that's probably because everyone there, they assume, believes in Jesus and has taken God as their personal savior.
Yeah, but usually they would say that this is an act of anger,
right,
an angry God. So and he strikes people he's angry at. So I would say, is God expressing his displeasure for racists and small-minded, small government types who would deny women health services, who would this, that, and the other thing, who want to... I mean, why? They never say it when it's their own who's getting clobbered.
It's true.
Yeah. As Roger says, they don't have New York City values, and yet God is coming at them. By the way, New York City values is again, dog whistle code, for those of you who don't know, for Jew. We're finding out a lot of the undercover ways that anti-Semites talk to each other. New York, globalist, internationalist, elite. Anytime you say elite, it comes down to Jews. And Roger writes, an obvious note, Texans are well represented by those who believe in small government and little infrastructure, but are willing to take every scrap of federal money during this disaster. Now is not the time, but at some point they need to be reminded why we have taxes. They don't want to be accused of being takers, do they? Or entitled, do they? I hate being ugly about this tragedy, but how do we make people understand that government isn't bad? This is why it needs taxes.
Right.
Yeah, they sometimes don't spend their tax money well. God knows. I don't agree with where all of it's going. Did you see Rex Tillerson stick it to the president on Sunday? So he's on Fox News, of course. And he's somehow Chris Wallace, they're talking about, I guess they came up with that United Nations committee putting out a warning that the United States was in danger of, real human rights violations and heading into potentially racial conflict. The kind of warning, they've only put out 7 similar warnings in 10 years. And they've usually gone to, they've gone to the Ivory Coast, they've gone to Iran, they've gone to the United States. And so they're talking about that. And Tillerson starts talking about American values and what we stand for. And he's saying, I don't believe anyone doubts the American people's values or our government's commitment to those values. And then Chris Wallace says, and what about the president's values? And the Secretary of State divorced himself at that point from his boss, the president, and said, the president speaks for himself. In other words, he just flat out said that the president's values don't dovetail with America's values. That's what he was saying. Mm-hmm. Wow. Oh. So my favorite piece in the New York Times yesterday was a thing about memorizing poems. Charlie, did you have to memorize poems in school? Do you remember any?
I don't. I do remember, though, we had to do one in, I think it was 11th grade English class. And I should have looked it up. But there's a poem called The Ball Poem. And I don't remember all of it, but the first line is, there's a boy who has lost his ball. And I just thought it would be funny to stand up in front of the class and say, there's a boy who forgot his ball.
And everybody would laugh.
And I would put an S on the end occasionally on the poems.
Well, it's okay. Never mind.
But yeah, no, it was helpful.
No, never mind. Apparently, memorization of poems is dead. I mean, no kids anymore are asked to memorize. It's hard to memorize a poem. But this was a piece that was arguing for how wonderful it is to have, once you memorize it, well, it's not true because I memorized a lot of them. And I don't know that any of them are still there in toto, but little bits and pieces are. And they're wondrous gifts to have given yourself. And this person points out that, you know, human beings since ancient times have memorized poetry. Actually, before the invention of writing, that was the only way to retain it. You had to memorize it, and then you possessed it. You couldn't own it on a piece of paper. Even after paper and publishing and the printing press, there still were people who wandered around, bards, they would call them, who recited poetry to entertain. And poetry is, you know, it's just not something that we ever, you know, as they point out, people think, why should I memorize a poem when if I want to, you know, I can find it on Google like that. There's no reason to trouble my pretty little head with memorizing something that is available to me, bang, like that. But here's the sad stuff. You don't own anything anymore if we don't exercise. Our brains are going to turn to mush, I got to tell you. We don't tax them like we used to. I remember one that I had memorized, which was a long one. And I actually did look it up yesterday because I was trying to do it and I just couldn't remember. My God, it was way, way, way too long. And it was a Robert Browning poem. I saw on the internet, they said it wasn't a poem as much as it was a dramatic monologue. And it's called My Last Duchess. Look it up. It is chilling. It's this nobleman who clearly has a visitor. And he's talking about this portrait of this beautiful woman who it turns out was his. That's my last duchess, is the first line. And he begins talking about her and how lovely and this and that, but how she, and it's quite clear by the time the thing ends that he'd had her killed. And that he's going to replace her by somebody, this guy he's talking to. It is chilling. I love that, My Last Duchess. And then, of course, I did all the obligatory Shakespeare stuff. You never had to do a Shakespeare sonnet or a to be or not to be?
Yeah,
that is the question?
Yeah, there was definitely, I had some Shakespeare memorization. It was the one in particular, the poem that I mentioned, it was a John Barrowman poem.
Oh, okay. Well, that's okay.
Right, so I'm sure John Barrowman thinks, kids all over high school were learning his poem so they could say balls in class. But it was a great poem about one losing their youth. And
okay.
It was a great poem. But sonnets were. I took a Shakespeare class in college, and it was we all had to memorize.
I used to know the to be or not to be, but I don't. That is the question. But so little phrases. So sometimes I'll be talking and I'll say something like a bear bodkin. Little bits and pieces keep coming at you.
Right.
What else? Trees. I had to do Trees by Joyce Kilmer, who we were all shocked to find out was a guy. Right.
Yeah.
I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree.
Right.
A tree whose something arms are, whose against the earth's sweet flowing breast. Ha! Everybody giggle.
She said breast.
A tree that in summer, I don't remember it, might wear a nest of robins in her hair. Poems are writ by fools like me, but only God can make a tree.
Here.
One that April with his sure salt, the draught of marsh had passed into the water, and bathed every vein in swish liqueur, of which vertu engendred is the fleur. You know what that is?
No.
Chaucer.
Look at that.
And no one knows if I'm pronouncing it right,
Right.
but who, yeah, that's Middle English, right? One that April, when April.
I've been sitting here trying to remember the Raven, because the Raven is another one that we used to
Oh,
do as
that's
a-
one of my favorite lines, The Raven.
Yeah.
For, not alliteration, but for, what's the word? Listen to this sibilance. Listen to how he is, with the line, creating the very sound
Right.
that he's talking about.
Yeah.
Here it is. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me. Is that not great?
That's great, yeah.
And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. And so, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more."
It's awesome. It's a great poem.
You memorized poem today. I'm telling you, it gives you pleasure. It does. And I found out when I was a kid that the way to keep a poem in your head, as you're going to sleep, and I'd be lying in my bed, say it once to yourself, and if you got through it, it's there. Go to bed. When you wake up in the morning, it's there. Honestly, it's there. You own it. I think I've gone too long. Okay, memorize a poem.
Quoth Lynn Cullen, nevermore.
Nevermore. However, I will be back tomorrow, and we'll talk about the next whatever pile-up of journalistic horror has happened in the 23 hours since we last spoke, or something. I'm not quite right today. God bless you. Bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.